Marcus Chen had been mining asteroids for 3 years when everything changed. His ship, the Lucky Strike, was just a small operation. One man, basic equipment, and dreams of finding something valuable in the cold darkness of space. Most days brought nothing but rock and ice. Today was supposed to be different. The asteroid field near Kepler 442 had shown promising mineral readings. Marcus guided his ship between the floating chunks of rock, his scanner beeping steadily as it searched for precious metals. The work was lonely, but he preferred it that way. No corporate bosses breathing down his neck, no paperwork, just him and the stars. That's when he saw the ship. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen before, sleek and organic-looking, like it had been grown rather than built. The hull shimmered with colors that shifted between silver and deep blue, but something was wrong. The ship was tumbling slowly, venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Debris floated around it like a deadly cloud. Marcus's communications array crackled to life, picking up a weak distress signal. The language was completely alien, but the panic in the voice was universal. Someone was in trouble. He should have called it in to the authorities. That was protocol when dealing with unknown alien contact. But the nearest patrol ship was 3 days away, and whoever was in that vessel might not have 3 hours, let alone 3 days. Marcus made his choice. He maneuvered the Lucky Strike closer, dodging chunks of debris. The alien ship was beautiful even in its damaged state, but he could see the extent of the damage now. Whatever had attacked it had done a thorough job. Scorch marks covered the hull, and the organic-looking material seemed to be bleeding some kind of luminescent fluid. The distress call was getting weaker. Marcus suited up and activated his magnetic boots. The airlock cycled, and he pushed off toward the alien vessel. In the weightless silence of space, he could only hear his own breathing and the steady thrum of his life support systems. Finding an entry point wasn't easy. The ship's design was completely foreign to him, but near what he assumed was the rear, he found a section where the hull had been torn open. The edges were still glowing hot from whatever weapon had caused the damage. Inside, the ship was a maze of curved corridors that seemed to pulse with their own light. The air was thick and humid, with a sweet smell that reminded him of flowers. Emergency lights blinked in patterns he didn't understand, but the universal nature of emergency lighting was clear enough. He followed the sound of the distress call deeper into the ship. The corridor opened into what must have been the bridge. Control surfaces that looked more like works of art than technology lined the walls, and in the center, huddled behind an overturned chair, was the source of the distress call. It was a child. At least, Marcus assumed it was a child. The being was small, maybe 4 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly in the dim light. Large, dark eyes dominated a delicate face, and what looked like silver hair fell in waves around narrow shoulders. The creature wore clothing that seemed to be made of the same material as the ship, organic and flowing. When the child saw Marcus, those large eyes went wide with fear. It pressed itself further back against the wall, making a sound that might have been a whimper. Marcus raised his hands slowly, palm out, in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice carrying through the helmet's external speakers. "I'm here to help." The child tilted its head, clearly not understanding the words but perhaps recognizing the tone. Marcus kept his movements slow and deliberate as he approached. The little being's breathing was rapid and shallow, definitely afraid, but also possibly injured. That's when he noticed the blood. The child's left arm hung at an odd angle, and dark fluid stained the flowing garments. More concerning were the sparks and smoke coming from deeper in the ship. Whatever had damaged the hull was causing secondary systems to fail. The air was getting thicker, harder to breathe. Marcus knelt down a few feet from the child and activated his suit's translation software. It was designed for human languages, but it might pick up patterns. "Are you hurt?" he asked, pointing to the injured arm. The child's eyes darted between Marcus and the sparking control panels behind him. It said something in a musical language that sounded like singing. The translation software caught fragments, something about mother and gone and afraid. The ship shuddered around them. Whatever was causing the internal damage was getting worse. Marcus made another choice. He slowly reached out his hand toward the child. "Come with me," he said. "I can get you somewhere safe." The child stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment. Then, very carefully, it reached out with its good arm and touched his gloved fingers. The contact sent a shock through Marcus that had nothing to do with static electricity. For just a moment he felt what the child felt: terror, pain, and overwhelming sadness. But also hope. The child understood that he was trying to help. Lifting the small being carefully, Marcus was surprised by how light it was. The child weighed no more than a human 6-year-old, despite being taller. Its injured arm pressed against his chest, and he could feel the rapid beating of what he assumed was its heart. Getting back to the Lucky Strike was harder with a passenger, especially one that needed careful handling. The child clung to him with its good arm, making small sounds that might have been words of comfort or prayer. Marcus had to use his suit's maneuvering jets to navigate between the debris, moving slowly to avoid jarring the injured arm. Once aboard his ship, Marcus faced a new problem. His medical supplies were designed for humans. He had no idea what might be safe for an alien physiology. The best he could do was improvise a sling for the injured arm and offer the child water, which it accepted gratefully. The child sat on his small medical table, swinging its legs and looking around the ship with curiosity. Despite everything it had been through, there was a resilience there that impressed Marcus. This little being had just watched its home get destroyed and trusted a complete alien stranger to save it. Marcus tried the translation software again, this time letting it analyze the child's speech patterns. Slowly, words began to form on his screen. The child's name was something like Zara, close enough to a human name that Marcus could pronounce it. The child seemed pleased when he got it right. Over the next few hours, as Marcus set course for the nearest space station, he learned more. Zara's people were called the Ethereal, a fitting name for beings that seemed to glow with their own inner light. They were peaceful traders, traveling between star systems in their living ships. Zara's ship had been carrying her mother and several other adults when they were attacked by raiders. The translation software couldn't handle the complex emotional concepts the child tried to express, but Marcus understood the important part. Zara was alone now, and she was depending on him. By the time they reached Kepler Station, word of the rescue had somehow preceded them. Marcus wasn't sure how. He'd filed the required reports about alien contact, but he'd kept the details minimal. Yet when his ship docked, there was already a crowd waiting. Among them were beings he didn't recognize, tall, elegant figures in flowing robes that seemed to be made of starlight. They moved with a grace that made them appear to be floating rather than walking. Their faces were similar to Zara's, but more mature, with the same pale blue skin and large dark eyes. One of them stepped forward as Marcus emerged from his ship with Zara in his arms. When this being spoke, Marcus's translation software worked perfectly, as if these newcomers had already programmed it remotely. "Human," the tall figure said, its voice carrying harmonics that made the words seem to sing, "You have saved the daughter of our queen. I am High Counselor Ether. We have come to bring the young princess home." Marcus felt Zara's grip tighten on his arm. He looked down at the child he'd been thinking of as an orphaned refugee and realized he'd just rescued alien royalty. The High Counselor continued, Our queen wishes to meet the human who risked his life to save her child. You will accompany us to the ethereal homeworld where you will be honored for your courage." It wasn't really a request. Marcus looked at Zara, who was watching him with those large, dark eyes. She had been through so much, lost everyone she knew, and now she was being taken away by strangers. He might be strangers too, but he was the stranger who had saved her. "I'll come," Marcus said, surprising himself. "But I stay with her until she's ready to let me go." The High Counselor's expression was unreadable, but after a moment it nodded. "The Queen will be pleased by your dedication to the princess's well-being." As they prepared to leave Kepler Station aboard an ethereal ship that made Zara's family vessel look like a rowboat, Marcus wondered what he was getting himself into. He'd just wanted to mine some asteroids. Now he was apparently going to meet an alien queen. Zara rode in the seat next to him as their shuttle approached the massive ethereal vessel waiting in space. She had been quiet since seeing her people, but she hadn't let go of his hand. Whatever happened next, Marcus knew his life would never be the same. The ethereal ship was like a small city floating in space. Organic towers spiraled up from a central hub, connected by bridges that looked like frozen waterfalls. Gardens were visible through transparent sections of the hull, and the entire structure pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns. As they docked, Marcus caught sight of other ships in the fleet. Dozens of vessels, all different, but sharing the same organic beauty. This wasn't just a rescue mission. This was a formal procession, and he was at the center of it. The High Counselor led them through corridors that were more like tunnels through a living reef than the metal hallways Marcus was used to. The walls glowed softly, providing just enough light to see by. Other ethereal beings they passed stopped and stared at Marcus with expressions of curiosity and something that might have been respect. "Your actions have already become known among our people," the High Counselor explained as they walked. "Word travels quickly through the quantum resonance networks. The human who saved our princess is being discussed on 1,000 worlds." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," the High Counselor said, stopping to face him directly. "You did what humans do. That is why the Queen must meet you." They emerged into a vast chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The ceiling was transparent, showing the stars beyond, but the walls were covered in what looked like a living tapestry of light and color. Patterns flowed across the surfaces like slow rivers of luminescence. At the center of the chamber was a pool of water that seemed to glow from within, and rising from the pool, as if she had grown from the water itself, was the Queen. She was beautiful in a way that transcended species, tall and graceful like the others of her kind, but with a presence that made the air itself seem to shimmer around her. Her skin had a more pronounced luminescence, and her hair moved as if it were underwater even though she stood in air. When she spoke, Marcus felt the words as much as heard them. "Human Marcus Chen," she said, and hearing his name in that musical voice sent chills down his spine. "You have given me the greatest gift in the universe. You have returned my daughter to me." Zara finally let go of Marcus's hand and ran to her mother. The Queen bent down and embraced her child, and for a moment, both of them glowed so brightly that Marcus had to shield his eyes. When the light faded, the Queen was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You could have taken her to your authorities and claimed whatever reward they offered for first contact with our people. You could have sold her to those who would study her like a specimen. Instead, you protected her and made sure she came home safely." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "She was scared and hurt. I couldn't just leave her." "Exactly," the Queen said, and her voice held a note of something like triumph. "You could not just leave her. This is what makes your kind unique among the species we have encountered. Humans choose to help even when it costs them. She moved closer, and Marcus caught a scent like ozone and flowers. "There is something else you should know, Marcus Chen. When Zara touched you, she formed a resonance bond. It is rare among our people, and almost never happens with other species. She has claimed you as family." Marcus looked at Zara, who was watching him from beside her mother's flowing robes. The child smiled and waved, and Marcus felt that strange warmth in his chest again. "What does that mean?" he asked. The Queen's smile was mysterious. "It means, Marcus Chen, that you are no longer just a human who saved a princess. You are part of the royal family now, and family does not simply leave." As the implications of her words sank in, Marcus realized that his simple act of kindness had changed everything. He had gone from asteroid miner to alien royalty in the span of a few days. And judging by the Queen's expression, this was only the beginning. The royal chambers aboard the ethereal flagship were unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. Living walls pulsed gently with soft light, and furniture seemed to grow from the floor itself. Water flowed in impossible patterns through the air, forming decorative streams that defied gravity. The Queen had assigned him quarters next to Zara's, explaining that the resonance bond required proximity to maintain stability. Marcus sat on what he assumed was a bed, though it felt more like resting on a cloud, and tried to process everything that had happened. 3 days ago, he had been a simple asteroid miner. Now he was apparently an honorary member of an alien royal family, traveling through space in a bioship toward a world he couldn't even pronounce. A soft chime drew his attention to the wall, which had begun displaying moving patterns of light. The Queen's voice emerged from the display without any visible speaker. "Marcus Chen, please join us in the primary council chamber. It is time you understood the full significance of your actions." The corridors of the ship seemed to guide him automatically, the walls glowing brighter in the direction he needed to go. Marcus passed other ethereal beings who bowed slightly as he approached. The respect in their gestures was unmistakable, though he still didn't understand why saving one child had earned him such reverence. The council chamber was vast, with a domed ceiling that showed real-time views of space around them. Representatives from what looked like dozens of different ethereal colonies sat in a circle, their forms slightly translucent as if they were attending via some form of holographic projection. At the center sat the Queen, with Zara beside her looking much healthier than she had on the damaged ship. "Marcus," the Queen said as he entered, "meet the Council of Spheres. They represent all ethereal worlds and colonies. They have come to hear your story directly." One of the council members, an elderly-looking being with silver-tinted skin, leaned forward. "Human Marcus Chen, we must understand. When you discovered Princess Zara, did you know she was royal?" "No," Marcus answered honestly. "I just knew she was a child who needed help." The council members exchanged glances that seemed to carry entire conversations. The silver-skinned elder spoke again. "In our long history, we have encountered many species. Most follow predictable patterns when faced with opportunities for advancement. They calculate costs and benefits. They consider political implications. You did none of these things." Another council member, this one with golden undertones to her skin, added, "Our scouts have been observing human space for several cycles. Your species confuses us. Individually, you are capable of great cruelty, but you are also capable of remarkable selflessness. The combination is unprecedented." The Queen raised her hand for silence. "Show him the recordings, Counselor Vale." The space above the circle filled with holographic displays. Marcus watched in amazement as scenes played out from across human space. Rescue missions in asteroid fields, humans sharing resources with stranded aliens, volunteers working in disaster relief on distant worlds. But there were darker scenes too: conflicts, exploitation, environmental destruction. Your species is chaos personified, said Counselor Vale, the golden-tinted being. You are capable of both transcendent nobility and devastating selfishness, often within the same individual. It makes you unpredictable in ways that terrify most galactic civilizations. Marcus felt defensive. We're not perfect, but we're trying to do better. Indeed, the Queen interjected. And that effort, that struggle toward betterment despite your nature, is what makes you extraordinary. Most species find their nature and accept it. Humans fight against their worst instincts and strive for their best ones. The elderly counselor activated another display. 300 years ago, our people encountered another species much like yours. They called themselves the Void Hunters. They possessed the same unpredictability, the same capacity for violence and compassion. But when faced with the choice between growth and dominance, they chose dominance. They nearly destroyed our civilization before we managed to contain them. Marcus felt a chill. You think humans might do the same? Some of our people believed so, the Queen admitted. That is why contact with your species has been limited. But your actions have changed the discussion. You represent the best of human nature, the willingness to sacrifice for others without expectation of reward. Zara, who had been quietly listening, suddenly spoke up in her musical language. The translation came through Marcus's implant immediately. The ethereal had upgraded it during his first night aboard. Uncle Marcus didn't know I was a princess. He just saw someone who needed help. That's what makes him special. The council members seemed surprised by the child's contribution, but the Queen smiled proudly. From the mouths of children come the clearest truths. Zara has named you Uncle Marcus, making you family in the most literal sense our laws recognize. But more than that, your action has provided us with proof that humanity can choose compassion over opportunity. Marcus was beginning to understand the scope of what was happening. This isn't just about saving Zara, is it? This is about first contact between our species. The Queen nodded. The Council of Spheres has been debating formal contact with humanity for decades. Your rescue of Zara has provided the evidence needed to move forward. But there are conditions. The elderly counselor spoke up. The ethereal collective will open diplomatic relations with humanity. We will share certain technologies and offer partnership in exploring regions of space too dangerous for either species alone. But we require assurance that humanity's better nature will prevail. What kind of assurance? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. You, the Queen said simply. You will serve as humanity's first ambassador to our people. Your actions have already proven your character. More importantly, the resonance bond with Zara ensures your commitment to our well-being. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a physical burden. I'm just a minor. I don't know anything about diplomacy or politics. Precisely why you are perfect for this role, said Counselor Vale. Politicians calculate, diplomats negotiate, but you simply do what is right. That honesty is what our people need to see from humanity. The Queen stood and moved to a section of wall that began glowing brighter at her approach. There is something else you must understand, Marcus. The attack on Zara's ship was not random piracy. Our intelligence networks have identified the attackers as advanced scouts for a hostile alliance called the Hegemony. They seek to expand their territory by destroying species they consider threats. Images filled the air above them. Massive warships with angular, aggressive designs, worlds stripped of life, entire civilizations reduced to empty space. Marcus felt sick as he realized the scale of the destruction. The Hegemony has been moving toward both our space and yours for several years, the Queen continued. Alone, neither humans nor ethereal could stand against them. Together, we might have a chance. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. You're talking about an alliance, A military alliance. We are talking about survival, the elderly counselor said grimly. Your species' capacity for warfare is well documented. Our people's defensive technologies are advanced. Separately, we are targets. United, we become a force capable of stopping the hegemony's expansion. Zara climbed down from her chair and walked over to Marcus. She took his hand in her small one, and again he felt that warm connection between them. Through the resonance bond, he could sense her emotions, trust, affection, and something deeper. She saw him not as a human or an alien, but simply as someone who had chosen to help when help was needed. I accept, Marcus said, the words coming out before he fully processed them. But I have conditions, too. The council members looked surprised. It was probably the first time anyone had tried to negotiate with the queen of the ethereal collective. Speak, the queen said, and Marcus thought he detected amusement in her tone. First, any technology sharing goes both ways. If we're going to be allies, we need to be equals. Second, no secret agreements. Both sides need to know what they're getting into. And third, Marcus looked down at Zara, who was watching him with those large, dark eyes. Zara gets to choose how much contact she wants with me. The resonance bond shouldn't be a cage for either of us. The queen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried new respect. You understand the implications of what you are accepting? You will be giving up your old life entirely? Your ship, your independence, your human identity as you knew it. Marcus thought about the lucky strike, sitting empty in the docking bay of Kepler Station. He thought about the solitary life he had built for himself among the asteroids, answering to no one, responsible for nothing but his own survival. It had been safe, predictable, and ultimately empty. I'll miss some things, he admitted, but I found something here I didn't know I was looking for. What is that? Counselor Vale asked. Marcus squeezed Zara's hand gently. Purpose. The queen smiled, and her luminescence brightened noticeably. Then it is decided. Marcus Chen of Earth, you are hereby appointed first ambassador between the Human Federation and the Ethereal Collective. Your first task will be to return to human space and prepare your leaders for formal contact. But Uncle Marcus will come back, right? Zara asked, her voice carrying a note of worry that the translation software couldn't quite capture. Marcus knelt down to her level. I'll come back. That's what family does for each other. The resonance bond flared stronger at his words, and for a moment, Marcus felt something he had never experienced before, a connection to something larger than himself. Not just to Zara, but to the entire ethereal collective. He was no longer just human. He wasn't quite ethereal either. He was something new, something that bridged the gap between two species. Over the following days, as the ethereal fleet traveled toward the edge of human space, Marcus learned about his new role. The ethereal had been preparing for this moment for years, gathering intelligence about human culture, politics, and psychology. They had identified key leaders who would be receptive to alliance and others who would resist. They had studied human communication patterns and developed protocols for formal contact. What they hadn't expected was to find their ambassador among the asteroid miners of the frontier. Your background is actually advantageous, the Queen explained as they reviewed files on human government structures. You represent the everyday human rather than the elite. When your leaders see that an ordinary person can work successfully with us, it will ease their fears about cultural compatibility. Marcus wasn't sure he appreciated being described as ordinary, but he understood the logic. He had lived the kind of life most humans would recognize, working hard for modest rewards, making do with limited resources, facing problems with practical solutions rather than grand strategies. The ship's biocomputer had generated detailed briefing materials about the political situation in human space. The Earth Federation was the largest human government, but there were dozens of independent colonies and corporate territories. Getting them all to agree to anything would be a challenge, especially something as unprecedented as a military alliance with an alien species. "There will be fear," Marcus told the Queen during one of their planning sessions. "Humans have spent centuries imagining first contact scenarios, and most of them don't end well for humanity." "Fear is understandable," the Queen replied, "but fear can be overcome by demonstrating mutual benefit. The hegemony threat is real, and your intelligence networks have detected their scouts already. When we present evidence of this common enemy, rational leaders will see the necessity of cooperation." Zara had become Marcus's constant companion during these planning sessions. She was remarkably intelligent for a child, asking questions that often revealed flaws in their assumptions about human psychology. Her perspective, unencumbered by adult prejudices, helped them develop a contact protocol that emphasized shared values rather than differences. As they approached the edge of human space, Marcus felt the weight of what he was about to attempt. He would be asking his species to trust an alien civilization they had never heard of, to join an alliance against an enemy they had barely detected, based on the word of a former asteroid miner who had stumbled into the role by accident. But looking at Zara, remembering the moment when he had chosen to help a frightened child despite the risk, Marcus realized that the best decisions were often made without calculating all the consequences. Sometimes you just had to do what felt right and hope that everything else would work out. The human patrol ship that intercepted them was a standard Federation destroyer, bristling with weapons and radiating suspicion through every transmission. Marcus broadcast his identification codes and requested permission to speak with the ship's captain directly. "This is Captain Sarah Morrison of the FSS Vigilant," came the response. "Marcus Chen, you are listed as missing and presumed dead. Please explain your current status and the identity of the vessels accompanying you." Marcus took a deep breath. This was it, the moment when everything would change for humanity, one way or another. "Captain Morrison," he said into the communication array, "my name is Marcus Chen, and I am the first human ambassador to the Ethereal Collective. I need to speak with the Federation Council immediately. We have a situation that affects the survival of both our species." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. When Captain Morrison finally responded, her voice was carefully controlled. "Mr. Chen, you are requesting clearance for alien vessels to enter Federation space. I hope you understand the magnitude of what you're asking." "I do," Marcus replied, looking at Zara, who nodded encouragingly. "And I hope you understand the magnitude of what's at stake if we refuse to work together." 6 months after first contact, Marcus stood in the main conference room of the Federation Council building on Earth, watching as human and ethereal delegates worked side by side on defensive strategies. The transformation had been remarkable, though not without challenges. The initial reaction to the ethereal fleet's arrival at Earth had been pure chaos. Half the Federation military had wanted to open fire immediately, while the other half had been paralyzed by protocols that had never imagined this scenario. It had taken Marcus 3 days of constant negotiation, with Zara serving as a living demonstration of ethereal peaceful intentions, before the Council agreed to formal talks. "Uncle Marcus," Zara called from across the room, where she was helping a group of human engineers understand ethereal bioship technology. The child had become something of a celebrity on Earth, her natural curiosity and lack of prejudice making her the perfect bridge between the species. "Dr. Patterson wants to know if our ships can really grow new hull sections." Marcus smiled as he watched the interaction. Dr. Patricia Patterson was one of Earth's leading xenobiologists, and she had been fascinated by ethereal biotechnology from the moment she first saw it. Zara, despite being only a child, possessed an intuitive understanding of her people's living ships that amazed the human scientists. "Tell her to ask the ship directly," Marcus suggested. The bio-consciousness might respond to her queries if she approaches it respectfully. Over the past months, Marcus had learned that being an ambassador involved far more than formal negotiations. He had become a cultural translator, helping both sides understand not just what the others were saying, but what they meant by it. Humans communicated directly, but often hid their true intentions. Ethereal spoke in layers of meaning that could confuse humans who took every word literally. The real breakthrough had come when the hegemony finally made their move. "Ambassador Chen," called Admiral Harrison from the tactical display at the center of the room. "The latest reports from the outer colonies are coming in. Hegemony forces have hit 3 more systems in the past week." Marcus joined the Admiral at the display, where holographic representations showed the current state of known space. Red markers indicated hegemony attacks, yellow marked contested territories, and blue showed the growing human-ethereal alliance. The pattern was clear. The enemy was probing for weaknesses while building up forces for a larger assault. "How are our joint patrols performing?" Marcus asked. Admiral Harrison's expression was one of grudging admiration. "Better than I expected, honestly. The ethereal defensive screens are incredible. They can absorb energy weapon fire that would vaporize one of our destroyers. And their ability to heal damage in real time is giving our tactical computers fits, trying to calculate effective targeting." "What about human contributions?" "Your people's weapons technology is more advanced than ours," admitted Counselor Ether, who had remained on Earth as the Ethereal's primary diplomatic representative. "And human tactical thinking is creative in ways we did not anticipate. Your captain's strategies often involve calculated risks that our people would consider too dangerous." Marcus nodded. The Alliance was working because each species brought different strengths. Ethereal ships were nearly indestructible but carried limited offensive capabilities. Human vessels were more fragile but packed devastating firepower. Ethereal tactical thinking was methodical and careful, while human commanders were willing to take wild gambles that sometimes paid off spectacularly. The door to the conference room opened, and Queen Lyrelai herself entered. She had been staying on Earth for the past month, working directly with Federation leadership to coordinate the growing alliance. Her presence on the human homeworld had been controversial at first, but her grace and obvious care for Zara had won over even the most suspicious politicians. "Marcus," the Queen said, "we have received word from our deep space monitors. The hegemony is massing a fleet near the Vega system. Intelligence suggests they are preparing for a decisive assault on both our territories simultaneously." Admiral Harrison pulled up the tactical display showing Vega's position relative to both human and ethereal space. "They're smart. If they control Vega, they can cut our supply lines and prevent us from supporting each other." "How large a fleet are we talking about?" Marcus asked. Counselor Ether activated his personal communication device, and a 3-dimensional image appeared above the table. The sight made several human officers gasp. Hundreds of angular, aggressive-looking warships hung in formation around massive command vessels that dwarfed anything in the human or ethereal fleets. "Our combined forces number approximately 200 ships," the Queen said quietly. "The hegemony fleet contains over 600 vessels, many of them larger and more heavily armed than anything we have encountered before." The room fell silent. Everyone could do the math. Even with the advantages of the Alliance, they were badly outnumbered. "There has to be something we can do," Dr. Patterson said from across the room, where she had been listening while continuing to work with Zara on bioship interfaces. "What about the resonance bond technology? Zara mentioned that it allows for direct mind-to-mind communication. Could we use that for fleet coordination?" Marcus felt Zara's attention focus on him through their bond. The child had grown remarkably over the past months, and her understanding of ethereal abilities had deepened considerably. Through the resonance connection, he sensed her excitement at Dr. Patterson's suggestion. That is theoretically possible, Counselor Ether said slowly. But it has never been attempted on such a scale. The resonance bonds are typically limited to family units or very small groups. But Uncle Marcus isn't ethereal, Zara said, bouncing with excitement as she approached the main group. If the bond works between different species, maybe we can create bonds between human and ethereal ship crews. That would let our fleets work together like they're all part of the same mind. The Queen looked at her daughter with surprise and pride. Zara, that is actually brilliant. Marcus, you and my daughter already share such a bond. Could you serve as a template for expanding the connection? Marcus felt a flutter of nervousness. What would that involve? We would need to study the resonance pattern between you and Zara, then attempt to replicate it with volunteer crews from both fleets, Counselor Ether explained. The risks are unknown, but the potential advantages are enormous. Imagine fleet coordination with no communication delay, no misunderstandings, no need for complex tactical signals. Admiral Harrison was already running tactical scenarios in his head. If we could achieve that level of coordination, it might offset the numerical disadvantage. When would we need to attempt this? The Hegemony fleet will be in position to launch their assault within 2 weeks, the Queen said. If we are going to try this approach, we need to begin immediately. The next 10 days were a blur of preparation and experimentation. Marcus found himself at the center of a research effort that pushed the boundaries of both human science and ethereal understanding. The resonance bond with Zara became a roadmap for connecting minds across species barriers. The first successful test linked Marcus with Captain Elena Vasquez of the FSS Intrepid and ethereal ship singer Melodious Current. The sensation was indescribable. Suddenly, Marcus could feel the thoughts and intentions of 2 other beings as clearly as his own. Captain Vasquez's tactical mind complemented Melodious Current's intuitive understanding of space and energy flows, creating a hybrid consciousness that was more than the sum of its parts. It's incredible, Captain Vasquez reported after the link was established. I can feel the ship's biosystems as if they're extensions of my own body, and Melodious Current can understand human tactical concepts without translation. Similar tests with other volunteer crews yielded equally promising results. Not every pairing worked. Some personalities were too different to maintain stable connections, but enough succeeded to create a core group of resonance-bonded command crews. Zara, despite her age, proved to be essential to the process. Her natural ability to form resonance bonds allowed her to serve as a living bridge, helping establish connections that might have been impossible otherwise. The child who had started this all by simply being in need of rescue had become the key to saving both civilizations. When the Hegemony fleet finally moved toward Vega, the combined human-ethereal force was ready. Marcus stood on the bridge of the flagship Harmony, a hybrid vessel that incorporated technology from both species. Around him, human and ethereal crew members worked in perfect synchronization, their resonance bonds creating an efficient coordination that amazed everyone who witnessed it. All ships report ready, Captain Vasquez announced from her position at the tactical station. Through the resonance network, Marcus could feel the readiness of the entire fleet, 200 ships functioning as a single, coordinated entity. The battle began as the Hegemony force dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Vega. Their ships moved in the rigid formations Marcus had come to associate with their species, efficient but predictable. They clearly expected to overwhelm the Allied fleet through sheer numbers. What they encountered instead was something unprecedented in galactic warfare. The Allied fleet moved like a living entity, ships flowing around enemy formations in patterns that seemed to defy conventional tactics. Ethereal vessels absorbed energy weapon fire that would have destroyed human ships, while human vessels unleashed devastating volleys from positions that should have been impossible to coordinate. Through the resonance network, Marcus felt the surprise and growing panic of enemy commanders as their carefully planned assault fell apart. The hegemony had prepared for two separate fleets, following predictable tactical doctrines. They had no answer for a hybrid force that combined the best of both species while compensating for their respective weaknesses. "Enemy flagship is breaking formation," reported shipsinger Melodious Current through the bond. "Their command structure appears to be collapsing." Marcus could sense it too. The rigid hierarchy that held the hegemony fleet together was becoming a liability as commanders struggled to adapt to unexpected tactics. The resonance-bonded crews of the Allied fleet could adjust their strategies in real time, while the enemy was limited by slow communication and inflexible command structures. The turning point came when Zara, monitoring the battle from the safety of the command center, made a crucial observation. "Uncle Marcus, their ships all follow the same patterns. What if we showed them something they can't copy?" Through the resonance bond, she shared her idea with the entire fleet simultaneously. It was audacious, risky, and completely contrary to conventional military wisdom. It was also perfectly human in its willingness to gamble everything on a single decisive moment. The Allied fleet suddenly scattered in all directions, appearing to abandon any coordinated strategy. To the hegemony commanders, it must have looked like complete chaos. They moved to exploit what seemed like a catastrophic breakdown in alliance coordination. Instead, they flew directly into a trap. The scattered Allied ships had positioned themselves precisely where the resonance network predicted the enemy would go. As hegemony forces pursued what they thought were retreating vessels, they found themselves caught in overlapping fields of fire from hidden positions. Human weapons and ethereal energy screens combined in devastating effect, systematically dismantling the larger enemy fleet. The battle ended with the complete withdrawal of surviving hegemony forces. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, they had encountered something they couldn't simply overwhelm through superior numbers. Standing in the aftermath of victory, Marcus reflected on how far he had come from that moment when he first saw a damaged alien ship floating in the asteroid field. His decision to help a frightened child had grown into something that changed the galaxy itself. "The hegemony will not return to this region of space," Queen Lyralai said as the combined fleet regrouped near Vega. "Word of this defeat will spread throughout their empire. They will seek easier targets elsewhere." "And our alliance?" Admiral Harrison asked. Marcus looked at Zara, who was practically glowing with excitement over the successful battle. Through their resonance bond, he could feel her confidence and joy, but also her deep affection for the human friends she had made. She would never be just ethereal again, just as he would never be just human. "Our alliance is permanent," the Queen said with a smile. "My daughter has made sure of that. The resonance bonds we have created cannot be easily broken, and they will serve as the foundation for continued cooperation between our species." Dr. Patterson approached with a datapad full of readings from the battle. "The coordination we achieved today was beyond anything I thought possible. With this technology, we're not just allies, we're becoming something new, a hybrid civilization that combines the strengths of both species." Marcus nodded, understanding finally why the Queen had said that family doesn't simply leave. Zara's resonance bond with him had been the first step in creating connections that would reshape both human and ethereal society. What had started as one man's compassion for a child in distress had become the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization. "What happens now?" Captain Vasquez asked. Marcus looked out at the combined fleet. Human and ethereal ships working together to repair battle damage and care for the wounded. Crew members from both species moved freely between vessels, the resonance bonds making them family in the truest sense. "Now we go home," he said, "all of us, together, and we build something better than either of us could have created alone." Zara took his hand, and through the resonance bond, Marcus felt her complete agreement. The child who had started this transformation was ready to help guide it into the future. As the combined fleet prepared to return to Allied space, Marcus realized that his journey from asteroid miner to galactic ambassador was complete. But Zara was right. Family doesn't leave. His real adventure was just beginning.